Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This was a fairly big reading week and I got through a lot of stuff. There was a lot of things that I had to review coming up, so I'm going to mention some of those here. Most of them are kids' titles, which I will review in full on Little Bookish Teacher. But one thing I do try to do, particularly with things that I receive for review either by publishers or by authors, is at least mention it on both channels because I think that's the fair thing to do. This is my reading week from the 18th until the 24th of February. I read a lot of things. I haven't actually counted them, so we'll just talk about them in a moment. I had one DNF this week. It was From the Embers by Elia Martinez. This was a special edition that I got in a subscription box. I did not get very far into this book. I think I got 1 and a bit chapters into it and I had to put it down. I just did not like the way that the two main characters were talking or thinking about each other. And I know from the premise of the book that the hero in this book is best friends with, I meant to say with the heroine's husband in this clip. And it's not a cheating story. There is an accident and both their spouses die and then they have to lean on each other. But I didn't like the setup for that. Like, it made me feel uncomfortable knowing what we were going into. So yeah, I wasn't going to continue reading it. All right, so then diving into some of the titles that I had for review. I received Lost and Found by Natalie Shampanier, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Natalie is a screenwriter and an author, and she reached out to me on social media to see if I would be interested in reviewing her picture book release, which came out in December last year. It is the story of a group of toys who are left behind at a camp and they end up in the Lost and Found. Dino Boy does not want to stay in the Lost and Found, so he's determined to escape and he recruits some new friends and together they try and make a break for it. And eventually they end up back in the Lost and Found and they end up being chosen by children to go to their forever homes. I know from what Natalie was telling me about the story, she used to work as a family therapist, family counsellor, and she worked with children in the foster and the adoption system, and that this story reflects some of that and also the themes of, you know, being determined and brave and finding love. And I really liked it. It was a gorgeous little story full of rhyming and bright, bold, colourful pictures. So thank you to Natalie for sending me a copy of it. I also received a copy of My Epic Dad Takes Us Camping by Dani B. This is another children's picture book. This time this one is Australian. I forget when it was either last year or the year before. Dani had sent me her very first picture book, which was My Extraordinary Mum. So this time we're back with Dad, and Dad is taking the kids camping, and everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong, because despite Dad's best efforts to plan this out, he is in desperate need of the first aid kit by the end of the first day. And the kids think it's hilarious. They love it. Dad is a little bit battered and bruised, but his kids are just enjoying spending time with him. So it is a really fun, funny story. Very bright, bold, colourful images. Really loved it. I also received a whole stack of books from Allen and Unwin, and these are all coming out on the 28th of February. The first one is The Month That Makes the Year, and this is by Inda Zahri, and this is a celebration of the practices of Ramadan through the eyes of a young girl who is joining in for the first time. And it is absolutely beautiful. I loved reading through this and learning just a little bit more about Ramadan, the importance of it to families and to community. And I think this is a really important book that is going to be coming out this year. I also got Margaret Wild's new book. This one is illustrated by Vivian Toe, and they both did The Sloth Who Came to Stay, which is a book that I absolutely adore. In this one, the little duckling gets very frustrated with something that Mum has done and tells her that they are running away. And they run away past all the other animals who are cuddling down with their grown-up for sleep, and then finally it gets dark and Duckling realises that maybe going home might be a good idea. Ando's 6th book in the Sky Dragon series, Rescue Flight. Again, I started reading this story from the previous book. I think that's when Alan Unwin sent me the first one. So in this one, Amber is off to an island to track down evidence of a rare bird that is being threatened by an oil company moving in, trying to strike up a deal with the local government. So lots of environmental issues in this one. There is also The Glow by Sofie, Laguna, and illustrated by Mark McBride. This is a middle grade horror story and it's creepy, but it was fun. And this is about two friends who are respectively an artist and a writer, and they like coming up with stories and made up monsters together. But then one day everyone else in the world seems to start behaving strangely. They're, attached to their screens. There's a strange blue light coming from the screens and they're basically unresponsive. And Megan and Lee appear to be the only two not affected by this. And it may or may not have something to do with the glow that is coming out of one of the caves along the coastline where they live. Creepy story, full of monsters, lots of illustrations the whole way through the book. Very, very interesting story. And then the final book that I received for review from Allen and Unwin was The Nightbirds by Kate J. Armstrong. This is a young adult political fantasy story, so not my usual thing, but gorgeous cover. And this is about a world where magic is sort of outlawed, and the Nightbirds are kind of this well-kept secret in town. And it's a place where 3 teens who have magic and are able to pass that magic to other people via a kiss are used to trade secrets. And that's where sort of that political intrigue element comes into it. But then of course, people want to get their hands on them for the power that they possess, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. And it's a very interesting young adult fantasy. I will have a separate review for this coming out on Little Bookish Teacher in the next week. Moving away from review titles, but I still have a couple of middle grade titles to go. The first one that I read was Otter by Katherine Applegate. This is a verse novel that is told from the perspective of Otter, who is a sea otter who was rescued when she was very young because she was separated from her mother. Humans tried to teach her how best to be an otter and then re-released her into the sea. And then years later, she is caught up in a shark attack and she ends up back on the shore, and the human scientists who first raised her have to try and save her life. This is a really gorgeous story. It does have a bit of a focus on conservation as people try to learn the best way to save and then re-release animals, and what happens when that is not the best option. So there's a lot of that discussion in here. It would be great for discussing as a class. Otter is a really sweet character. I mean, everything is told through her perspective, so we see the world as an otter, and it was just delightful. As we sort of jump backwards and forwards in time from the present day to when she was a pup, and then back again to the present day as she tries to make sense of her surroundings. So I just really enjoyed this one. It was very cute. I also read Amari and the Night Brothers and Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. I have a separate vlog for this, so I'm not going to talk about it in this video. I will leave it linked on the screen, but I did read them as part of this week. Okay, and then moving into adult romances, I read Three for All by Elia Winters. This is a polyamorous romance between Jeff and Patrick, who are a married couple, and Laurie, who is a PhD candidate who has studied polyamory. I think she's a psychologist or a therapist, and she's studied polyamory, and she works with one of the men. Now I forget who it was because I forgot to make a note of which person it was in the couple who had previously been in a polyamorous relationship but had chosen monogamy to be with the other and was very, very content with that decision. But the other person was feeling like, okay, but am I enough for them? And they also then find themselves having this attraction to Laurie. And so they actually all sit down, they all have a dinner, and they talk about, you know, whether or not them exploring a relationship together as a triad is even an option. And I really loved the discussion in this. I know that Elia Winters is very knowledgeable on this front. It is very much first-hand information. At times it does feel like we are getting an intro into polyamorous relationships, and that's fine because I think that is very useful in this particular story. It was just a really great small town, very steamy romance that explored ideas of dominance and submission in the bedroom. It also had great sex toy representation and pegging in it for those of you who are always on the lookout for that. Honestly, it was just a delightful time. Then I buddy read Glitterland with Bree. So we have been reading all of Alexis Hall's books together. I actually have the original and the new edition. I read the new edition. She was listening to the audio of the original one, but I know she now has a copy of this as well. So this is an contemporary romance. It is book 1 in the Spires series. It is about Ash, who is a writer who has a lot of mental health issues. He is bipolar, and in the past he has attempted to unalive himself, and he does still have those thoughts. He has also self-harmed and, you know, has his moments where he just spirals. He's friends with one of his past boyfriends, but that relationship is not at all healthy for him at this point in time. And when you read the story, you kind of get it because Niall does some things that I'm just still mad about. But he's out one night and he crosses paths with someone he terms a glitter pirate, and that's Darian. And they have a one-night stand, and then Ash freaks out, and then Darian turns up at one of his book signings and ends up back in Ash's life. And for the very first time, he's with someone who makes him happy. And at first, Ash doesn't reveal that he has mental health issues and he's doing okay. Like, he's not doing fantastic and he's not being fixed by the other character, but he's okay. And then his mental health issue is outed and he freaks out about that. And of course, then things start spiraling as the book goes on. And there's a point where he treats Darian really badly and my heart just absolutely broke. But it's one of those scenes where you go, I get why he's doing it, and it breaks my heart because he's just totally smashed his happiness and someone else's happiness because he was trapped. He felt trapped and he couldn't do anything about it. As with all Alexis Hall's books, this is just gorgeous. You have a relatively unsympathetic hero And that's fine. Like, Ash can be unsympathetic, but I really loved him and I wanted to see him happy. Darian was just absolutely precious. Absolutely adored him. Along with all of the content warnings I mentioned earlier, I will also say this one does have Ash using a lot of ableist language directed at himself intentionally. Like, there's an intention for why that happens. Like, when you're reading it, you get why he's using it, but if that's something that's triggering for you, just be aware of it because there's a lot of it in the story. But it was just great, and I loved that in this edition, because it's the re-release, there's actually annotations on the page. So Alexis Hall gives his thoughts on anything that was changed or tweaked or why he chose a particular phrase. There are some bonus content. There's an extra epilogue. There is a scene between two of the side characters. There's a recipe. Like, it's a good time. And I think that officially means that I'm caught up on the Spies books, everything that's currently out. Bree and I haven't read everything. I think we've still got Waiting for the Flood that we have to read together because we're bouncing around in the series. But I think I have technically read everything in the Spies universe now. I also reread the rest of the story by Bauer because I needed to. When I first read this last month, I told you guys that it would probably be one of my favorite books of the year. I absolutely think it will because I have not stopped thinking about this. I've literally not gone a day since I first read it that I haven't thought about this book, and I haven't thought about picking it up again. And it finally got to the point this week where I just had to pick it up again and read it because I needed something that made my heart happy. I also needed something that would make me cry and would be a safe space for me to do that and for me to have that catharsis because it's been a week. But mostly I wanted to read it because I know how much I loved it. I added even more tabs than I did last time, so this is now like a rainbow. And the next time I reread it, I will probably go through and actually annotate it inside because I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed, and I would like there to be a series with all of these characters, but I know that we probably won't get the same hockey team if we get another hockey book from Bauer, but they live rent-free in my brain. I'm not going to talk about this any more than that because I've already read it. But I did go and reread a short novella that takes place during the epilogue of this book. It's called All Your Tomorrows, and it has a focus on two of the side characters that we met in the rest of the story, Lawson and Brody. Through the course of the book, Brody in particular is dealing with some quite heavy things, including attempted SA, physical and mental abuse by a person in a position of power, and Lawson kind of adopted him in this book. Brody's just a kid. I think he's 19 in the rest of the story, and Brody is early to mid 20s and just took him under his wing and just thinks he is the best thing ever. And All Your Tomorrows is sort of the story of them acknowledging their feelings for one another. And it's just gorgeous. There is another novella on the website that I haven't read yet, and I will, but I didn't get a chance to do it before filming this video. So that was my reading week. It was a lot, but I'm really glad that I got to it. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. I'll leave all the links to them down below. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, you can leave any kind of hockey emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.